trigger words for me, if you will, are the words only and just. And had a conversation with a pharmacist just a couple of nights ago, and she said to me, well, I'm just a retail pharmacist. And I'm like, you have no idea the amount of impact you can have on so many people. You can impact, you can impact your team at the pharmacy. You can impact the patients that you serve. But there's this whole ripple effect that goes out from that, right? When you positively impact a patient, that impacts their caregivers. It impacts the community. And when you start doing this in the workplace, it's impossible that it doesn't carry over to home. Right? When that stuff carries over to home, and that's probably the easiest place to see it actually start to give you those benefits. It can be life-changing. It can be absolutely life-changing.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Quality Solutions Quality Corner Show. Buckle up and put your thinking cap on. The Quality Corner Show starts now.
Hello, Quality Corner Show listeners. Welcome to the PQS podcast, where we focus on medication use, quality improvement, and how we can utilize pharmacists to improve patient health outcomes. I'm your host, Nick Dorich. For today's episode, we've brought back a special guest, a recurring guest to the PQS Quality Corner Show. That's none other than our good friend and our leader in many ways, Jesse McCullough. Jesse McCullough, you'll know him from Keystone Pharmacy Insights. We've had him on the show previously. And with that, Jesse, I'll welcome you onto the show. How are you today? What's going on? And are you excited for today's podcast?
Hey, Nick, it is so good to be back here. It's always good to be, I consider you guys family, know, and I was just thinking about this in anticipation of recording this podcast today. You and I started this when? It was in 2019?
I believe so.
Are we like 5 years into this? And, I've gone on to do some different things, but it's just such an encouragement to me to see that this continues on. And it's good just to, it's good to be back, right? This is solid foundation. This is home turf. And I just love the conversations when we're here. So very much looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So, and Jesse, folks that are listening to this episode, they probably and hopefully have listened to you on the show before and may have heard of the Keystone Pharmacy Insights. But do you mind just giving us an overview of what it is that you do there, and then what information, what knowledge, what wisdom you hope to impart through your work with that organization?
Yeah, I would. What I have found in my career as a pharmacist is one of the biggest challenges that pharmacists at any level face is a lack of leadership skill. We find ourselves in a place where we become discouraged, we become frustrated with the things that are going on. And it took me a number of years to figure it out, but it was just this lack of knowing the right way to lead people, and that's what's led me on this on this journey. I am currently a pharmacist in the space of doing leadership training and development, equipping to use a play on terms here with the PQS team, right? But equipping pharmacists to lead their teams and their patients well. And one of the phrases that I like to use is that everybody deserves to be led well. And when you take that mentality, it dramatically changed my perspective with everyday life. when I recognize that everybody you come in contact with, they deserve to be led well.
Yeah, I love that perspective, and I also love the idea. Something that I really commit to is that every one of us is a leader. So it certainly starts with ourselves. It's very easy and it's human nature to point fingers and place blame at others who are not leading well, but it does start as well with our own attitude and approach. So hopefully with today's leadership lesson, I guess we can call it that, we're going to be able to explore the state of pharmacy practice, leadership opportunities, how that can apply to both us as individuals, how it can apply to the pharmacy community broadly, and what we can do to continue our own path of progression and growth for ourselves as individuals, for the patients that we're serving in the communities, and for our coworkers, our colleagues, our friends, our family that are working in pharmacy. So Jesse, with that, I think let's go ahead and jump into the questions for today's show. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great to me.
Perfect. Well, let's get started. And really, the big question I want to ask today, 2024, it seems like this is the case every year. We learn something new and we're faced with new
Mhm.
challenges, new barriers, new opportunities for growth. So, what has that been like, for you, or what do you think that has been like for pharmacy in 2024? What have we learned that is unique or different in 2024?
I don't know how unique or different this is, but I will tell you this is something that has stuck out to me more. I don't think this is something that's brand new that just emerged. But what I have noticed so much this year is just the need to help people recognize that leadership is not a title. It's not a title. And Nick, you and I have been around each other long enough, and I'm sure you've heard me tell the story that everybody is a leader, right? Everybody has some leadership abilities. Everybody has some level of influence. And I go to the absurd extreme to illustrate this, and I'll use a newborn baby, and I'll say is a newborn baby a leader? And people will like to say, well, probably not. But I'm going to tell you, to a new parent, that newborn baby leads a well, questionably responsible adult, and in my case, to becoming a competent parent, right? The That infant, through their crying and whatever, prompts that person, that adult, to become competent in their parenting skills, to change a diaper, to feed, to burp, whatever it is that baby needs. And what a leader does is it helps somebody get from where they are to a better place. And what I have noticed, and I've noticed this especially just in the last couple of weeks with especially with some conversations with pharmacists, it's very much it's minimized. People think that somehow this leadership responsibility, privilege, whatever word you want to use with it, is somehow reserved for some special few. So these folks that have some title, and there's also folks that think that just because they have a title, that people should listen to them and do, any and everything that they say. But what I have found is that the basic requirement to be a leader is to care about somebody near you. It's a pretty low threshold. If you care about somebody nearby you, what you want is you want to see them go from where they are to some better place. And there's a lot of pharmacists who struggle with this because it's probably, I guess I'll call it the curse of knowledge. It's that we become so close to those things that we are so good at, that we have a hard time understanding that people don't necessarily see it the same way. Words that are sort of trigger words for me, if you will, are the words only and just. And had a conversation with a pharmacist just a couple of nights ago, and she said to me, "Well, I'm just a retail pharmacist," and I'm like, you have no idea the amount of impact you can have on so many people. You can impact, you can impact your team at the pharmacy. You can impact the patients that you serve. But there's this whole ripple effect that goes out from that, right? When you positively impact a patient, that impacts their caregivers. It impacts the community. And when you start doing this in the workplace, it's impossible that it doesn't carry over to home, right? When that stuff carries over to home, and that's probably the easiest place to see it actually start to give you those benefits. It can be life changing. It can be absolutely life changing.
Yeah, and Jesse, when I hear you say, because I I hear you, and what it comes down to, it's that viewpoint or that consideration. Who are we helping? Who are we
Mhm.
working with? Who are we accountable for? And who do we want to help promote? So, for sometimes it's very easy to always just see what's happening, the 6 inches, the 2 feet in front of you, without
Mhm.
thinking or looking ahead. How does this work? How do our interactions help support the people around us? And you're absolutely right. When you talk about who we are supporting, if you are working in the pharmacy space, because it can be yourself, it can be the leaders or the manager that you report to,
Mhm.
even because while they may be while they may be your leader in title, there
Yeah.
are ways that you can impact and influence them as a leader as well that can be beneficial for both of you. It can certainly
Hmm.
be for the team around you, but for everyone who's a pharmacist, for everybody that works in healthcare, you are absolutely 100% leading the patients that you are serving, the community that you're serving. So I think, Jesse, that's the part. It's awareness, right? It's a spectrum of awareness to who you can impact and how you're influencing them. So is that the rabbit hole you're looking to go down today with
Well,
us?
you and I have had some conversations. Just to the listeners, Nick and I have a handful of conversations over the course of the year. Usually, it surrounds whatever popular movie is coming out that we will debate whether it's good or bad or whatever. Nick and I have a good relationship in that way. But we also talk about some of these fundamental challenges that pharmacists face, and pharmacists, while we want to think of ourselves as being perhaps a little more unique or a little more special, we face very much the same challenges that everybody else on planet earth faces, and one of those challenges is a fight for awareness. And I believe this is a framework that was developed by Bob Proctor, but it's one that I like to share, and it's called the 7 levels of awareness. And if you're following along, you may want to just take a couple of notes on this. But we'll start at the bottom. The lowest level of awareness is the level called animal awareness. This is high. I mean, this is when your behavior is very much like an animal. You're concerned about eating and sleeping, and it's fight or flight. It's highly reactive, right? And I've seen so much of this in pharmacy. Nick, I've probably told this story to you before. I don't know that I've shared it with this audience, but I would tell you that I have seen pharmacists who have had a challenging conversation with one patient or caregiver in the pharmacy. And what you do is you actually watch that carry over to every other conversation happening in that pharmacy. You see that it impacts how they engage with the team. You see that it impacts how they engage with the next patient. And in a lot of cases, what I see is that those pharmacists tend to shy back from the counter. Right? It's like I'll
Yeah.
I'll send my technician to talk to you because they're just they're kind of like a wounded animal, and maybe that's not the best illustration, but I'm afraid that far too many pharmacists can identify with that example.
So, and Jesse, before we go further into this
Mhm.
example and the levels of awareness, and even as we were talking here, I did a quick Google search to pull
Mhm.
this up, and it's often represented as a pyramid, right?
Mhm.
And having these levels where this is kind of the base level. I think my understanding of it, and as you brought up this idea for us to cover in this episode, this is kind of a spectrum of where we are, and it's not an awareness where throughout the course of a day, you may fluctuate, right, between different
Absolutely.
levels. So it may be, or as you said, the example with a pharmacist where they have a certain patient comes in and it's fight or flight. Nope, I don't want to deal with that person.
Mhm.
That's the animal. That's
Mhm.
that level. But it's, I guess, as we go into this conversation and where we want to push the audience, I think, is understanding when we are in these lower levels of the pyramid, when we are in these levels of that kind of animal or the other levels that we're going to get to, and how do
Mhm.
we increasingly put ourselves into positions that are higher up the pyramid? Is that a correct assumption here?
I think that's you're very much on the right path. The question that I would ask the audience is, where do you pay rent? And what I mean
Okay.
by that is, which of these levels of awareness do you find yourself at a lot? Because when you understand these different levels, what we always want to do is we want to be trying to get to the next level, right? Let's take it up a notch or take it up two. But to your point, it's a spectrum, it's a flow, and you can be flying, you can be having a wonderful day, and you can be operating at a very high level, and something can happen, and boom, you're down to level one, right? That, and we can probably all think, and you'll probably be able to think of some very practical examples that you've experienced by the time that we're done with this, if you're not familiar with this framework. But the question is, where do you pay rent? Where are you spending the most time?
Got it.
Right? Can you have something? Can something go wrong? And does that have to ruin your day and everybody else's day, or can something go wrong and you bounce back?
Got it. Okay.
So
So,
so I,
and
I
Yeah. So with that, and where you let off with our animal
Hmm.
level of awareness there, and again, that's the fight or flight. It's the react, respond. It's the so almost instantaneous. Something
Hmm.
happens,
Hmm.
most base nature reacting to it. Like again, the fight or flight response that's there from it. Generally, that's an item where that's really just survival mode, Jesse, right? And that may be something
It
that's
is.
perhaps more common for our pharmacy colleagues, perhaps during
Well,
flu
and
shot season or certain interactions.
yes, and keep this in mind. This whole framework applies to the people on the other side of the counter from you as well, right? This is not unique, right? I use this example. We're almost, oh my goodness, I should have done the calculation. It was about this time of year. It was right before Thanksgiving, whenever I was in pharmacy school, that I had a kidney stone. And I thought that first day I had that kidney stone, I thought, this is it. I'm dying today. I mean, for anybody that's ever had one, it can be a pretty intense pain. And whenever I went to the ER, I was very much an animal. All I wanted was pain relief. That's
Yeah.
the only thing that I wanted. Right. It's like I was in such misery. And there's a lot of people who present to the pharmacy and they're in rough shape. Right. They have been given life changing news and they present to you. Right. And we have the opportunity, and this is the leadership part of it. You have the opportunity to lift them up or you have the opportunity to kick them down. And I think that's very much a perspective, and that's why I like to share this framework, because it's something that helped me adjust my perspective and to see the pharmacy in a slightly different light to enable me to lead others better.
Understandable. So Jesse, with that as our starting point, then what's that next stage? What's that next part?
The next step, the next level of awareness is the level known as herd awareness. Right. So this is where you look and you see what's everybody else doing. Right, what's everybody else doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? And my experience, especially within chain pharmacy, is that this was so prevalent. Right, open enrollment season came, and then everybody started to call each other and say, well, which health plan are you signing up for? Well, I think B's the best one, so like everybody's signing up for option B. Right. There's so many things like that out there, and social media promotes that. They try to say, well, this is what the herd's doing, this is what you should be, interested in, or this is what you should think about certain things. But this herd awareness is so prevalent, and one of the things that I've also seen is, what type of continuing education do you do? We'll do what everybody else is doing, right? It may not necessarily, or I'll do the ones that are easy, right? I'll do the ones that are convenient, but the ones that really interest me, those I may not be as aggressive in seeking out. So I share this as well, and this affects the people coming into our pharmacies as well. Right. Whether it's Oprah or Dr. Phil or whatever, there's some morning talk show that would put forth some new product, or there'd be an interview, and now everybody is like, oh, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to do. Do you have this vitamin or this product? I remember the first day those nasal washes were promoted. Oh my goodness, the phone didn't stop ringing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It was insane. It was like, where did this come from? And it was this is what the crowd was after, right? So it's just something to be aware of, right? What's going on? You could see this in a pharmacy where if one person gets a little bit upset, the next person may get upset. Right. It's sort of if somebody on your team is upset, then you may see that carry over to other folks. Right. So it's just, again, I share this framework just to help I want to raise our awareness so that we can be more likely to see these things as they happen.
There's a part of this where it's I mean, this is somewhat a different phrase, but misery loves a crowd, right?
Mhm.
Is something, and that it can also mean good things here, right? It could be that same sort of thing, right? But this is going from that animal, it's the individualistic to a larger approach.
Mhm.
What's next, Jess?
What's next is perhaps the most dangerous level. And this is the level of aspiration, right? This is where you say, you know what? I'm tired of being at the animal level. I'm tired of doing everybody else is doing. I think there is something better. And you know what? I think I'm going to do something better. And perhaps the best illustration of this, I don't know when this podcast is going to be released, but we're going to be coming up on the end of the year here pretty soon. And with the new year, people are always making resolutions, and like we all know somebody, and maybe even ourselves, who've said, "This year, I'm going to get in shape." Right? This is the year, right? That's an aspiration. And what's so dangerous about it is that people will come around and they will give you verbal support of that aspiration. Nick, yes, you should get in shape. Oh, that's a great idea, Nick. Right? You have a bunch of pharmacies that say, "Oh, you know what? We really need to look at getting into fill in the blank XYZ. I think there's a new revenue stream that we can look at." But the aspiration is there, but the day-to-day prevents you from doing that. Right. And so what you have is you have people that will give you encouragement, and you may even feel like in your head that you're making progress, but you're not doing anything. Right. All you're doing is talking about it. And so and that's where it's also dangerous, because you probably don't have somebody who will hold you accountable at that time as well. Accountability is such a big thing.
And that's probably where you noted it when you let off saying that this is a dangerous step. My head immediately went to, okay, well, where is that? Where is that part that's come? And I think that's what you're talking to, because as we get that affirmation from others, it's the positive reinforcement that, yes, Nick, you're doing the right thing, you're on the right track. But if there's not a plan to back it up, all we get is that positive dopamine hit that says, hey, everybody thinks I'm doing great. But you've never actually made a change, right? You've committed to something, but you're not actually committing. Notice the change in tense there.
Yes.
You never actually, and is that the part there where that is wherein the danger lies?
That is where the danger is, because you are fooling yourself into thinking that something is happening. To our listeners, Nick and I go back a few years, and at one point I was working in a chain setting, and Nick was my account manager, right? And he would call up, and we would have a meeting about once a month, and we would look at different results that we were seeing on different performance measures, and he would say, "Well, what are you doing?" And I would probably share with him a number of aspirations of things that we would like to do, and Nick would say, "Oh my goodness, that sounds wonderful." And don't look in your file, Nick. I don't want to. I don't know what this. I don't know that I want those examples leaked here today. But that's it. It's like, "Oh, Jess, if you could get all your I said, I'm going to get all my pharmacists trained. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this." And it's like, "Oh, that sounds good. That's going to make an impact." But if those plans aren't executed, there's no benefit that comes from it. Right. And we could both leave that conversation feeling better about ourselves, because I'm like, "Oh, I have a semblance of a plan." Nick, you can go back, to some of the other folks in client services and say, "Hey, I talked with the chain. This is what they're looking at." I think that's what makes it dangerous. That's what makes it so dangerous.
So is this next step, this next level of awareness, is this something about specifically holding ourselves accountable? Like, I mean, that might be too specific, but what's this next item?
Well, this next one is the most painful.
Oh, I mean,
the next level is the most painful.
Danger. Yeah, you're gonna have to grow out of that.
Right.
Physical, emotional. Okay, go on.
Level 4 is individual expression. All right. Now let me continue on the example of, hey, you want to get in shape.
Yeah.
Right. So on January 1, you've signed up for the gym. Now, you haven't been to the gym in some amount of time, and you go to the gym and you use every machine that you can on January 1st. What do you feel like on January 2nd?
Like you never want to go back to the gym again.
Aha. And what do you feel like on January 3rd?
Guilty that you didn't go back to the gym.
So what we have to understand is that when we step out in individual expression, we need to expect to be met with immediate and decisive failure. Right? You need to walk outside and say, "You know what? I'm going to do this." And you need to expect to get punched in the nose. And this is where the awareness is so key, because if you don't have this awareness, you walk into that, you get punched in the nose, and what happens is that's it, I'm done. And you go back, you drop, to level one, level two. You're probably level one there, on January 2nd. You hurt so bad, all you want to do is lay on the couch or whatever. But you find yourself and you'll bounce back to that level two real easy, real easy. And so this is what's so key is that whenever you step out in individual expression, there's those folks that were cheerleaders for you, they may not necessarily be there. It's individual because it can also be quite lonely,
So and
right?
I think this part of it, I draw in a real life example here. I mean,
Mhm.
especially, us at PQS, and as we talk with pharmacies, we're talking about new services that patients can receive at their pharmacy. And Jess, I've lost count of how many times we've had pharmacy team members telling us, well, hey, we're offering this blood pressure reading or this A1C, or you've had this
Mhm.
experience with immunizations. And an
Mhm.
immediate response becomes, oh, well, I asked the patient, do you want to get your blood pressure reading? Do you want to get your immunization here at the pharmacy? And they said no.
Mhm.
That's kind of going to be an immediate response, and that can be an immediate response for a number of reasons. But
Mhm.
where we need to be aware and where we need to go from this is understanding not just that the patient said no, but understanding why the patient said no. And then
Mhm.
how do we change to have that conversation effectively with the patient? Because I mean, hey, if they need to, run because they're going to pick up their kids and it's 5 o'clock on a Monday, maybe it's, hey, we can schedule this ahead of time. There's some aspect that's what is our
Right.
follow-up, right?
Right, right. Because I mean, keep these different levels in mind as we think about this example. You could have somebody, you could be stepping out an individual expression, and you're offering an immunization. Right, Nick, can I give you this immunization today? Nick, you're coming into my pharmacy. You're at level one, right? You have that kidney stone, and you're not. It's like that is the last thing that, and so you may even say no in a very harsh way, right? And the result is that when you're stepping out individual expression and you experience that failure, you may give up. And this is something that I hear in pharmacies all too often. Well, it's this blanket expression where, oh, nobody wants them anymore, or everybody has them already, or fill in the blank. It's some language along those lines where we give this excuse, and it makes us feel better, and it allows us to drop down to that aspiration. Oh, it's a good idea, but like everybody has it done already, right? And you have, and you just have that place where you can have your awareness rest for a time.
Okay. So with that as level 4, what is 5, Jess?
Level 5 is the level of discipline.
The thing that everybody loves to have for others in their life, but not for themselves.
Yes.
I'm excited slash nervous about what you have to share here.
Well, the level of discipline, this is probably the least glamorous of all the levels. This is when you show up. This is when you put in the work. And I don't know if we would have done, we may have done a podcast on this way back in season one, where we looked at the law of process. I'm
We
wanting to say
did.
we
Yep.
did that,
Yep.
and we talked about how something doesn't happen in a day; it happens daily, and I just love that definition. But it very much leverages this level of awareness of discipline. It's where you show up every day and you keep putting in the work, and you keep putting in the work, and you get a little bit better, and you get a little bit better, and you keep putting in the work, and you keep putting in the work. And those of us that have with any amount of time in pharmacy practice, you recognize the impact that discipline has had, right? You will look back at some point, and I'll talk to my young pharmacists that may be listening here today, but you get licensed, and in that first year you look back and you think, oh my goodness, I knew nothing when I started, right? You look back and you think, oh my goodness, how on earth did I possibly survive that? And the answer is that you had discipline. You showed up. You put in the work. Now you took a few lumps here and there. Not every day was sunshine and lollipops. It's hitting the treadmill. It's doing the stairmaster. Whatever analogy you want to connect to, but you end up putting that in. And I think this is also key. Don't let's not overlook this from the patient side. right? A patient is diagnosed with a condition, they're prescribed a new medication that puts them, at that individual expression level. Right, you're going to try this new medicine, and they're going to try that new medicine, and they may not feel wonderful after it, right? You look at an antihypertensive, and please, just as a disclaimer here, nobody take any clinical recommendations from me on this. But you have some of that first dose hypotension, right? The blood pressure comes down, and people are tired, and they may not like the way that they feel, right? Or they may end up with the upset stomach, or whatever it turns out to be. And like this is, level 5 of discipline. That's the adherence level, right? That's putting it in. That's continuing, because if you do this time after time, day after day, week after week, month after month, that the benefit will be there.
All right, so that's level 5.
Hmm.
Level 6, I expect that this has to be, if level 5 is the boring, we're doing the work, we're putting in the time, I have to expect that level 6 is some degree, Jess, of aha moment, right?
Level 6 is the level of experience. And what's key about this is that as you go through something for the first time, everything is new. But after you do that for some amount of time, you gain that experience. And now what you have is you have some reserves. You have some perspective that allows you to navigate a scenario, and with a little more poise, with a little more endurance than maybe what you would have otherwise. I was thinking about this in preparation. In my pharmacy career, there were about 3 days where I thought maybe I made the wrong choice. One of those days was when Medicare Part D started in 2006, and there were so many challenges, and everything you did was such a struggle. And that happened for the first half of the month of January. And then it happened again for the first half of the month of February, but it wasn't as bad. And then it happened, and things improved. But I also noticed that my perspective, my awareness had improved on that as well. Now, if you're curious, the one of those other days where I thought maybe I made a bad choice as a pharmacist is when I erroneously placed an order for needles for immunizations, and instead of ordering the number of needles, I ordered that number of boxes, and I had pallets of
Bit of a
of,
difference there. Yeah.
of safety needles showing up at pharmacies. Where am I supposed to put this? That wasn't. But that it was not a good experience. But the fact of the matter is that we've all gone through hard times. However you want to define what a hard time is, we've all gone through them. So, when you go through that hard time again, you now have a little more resilience to be able to bounce through that. And there's probably a lot of our listeners who have went through the pandemic, and they haven't gone through something like that before. They've gone through some crisis. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there who've had different natural disasters, be it hurricanes or earthquakes or whatever, that have disrupted their business, and they're not pleasant to go through. But the fact of the matter is that you now have some experience that you can draw on, that heaven forbid that you have to go through it again. But if you did, you recognize that you would stand differently as you went through that again.
Yeah, and just with that, I'm not gonna bury it or try to confuse or have our listeners think that I'm not looking at the 7 levels of awareness infograph while we're going through this. That leads us to that last level of awareness, which is mastery. In that you've had the experience before, and you know what to do. Or it's a sort of item here I would add or contend that specifically in a pharmacy, I often use this example when we're talking about managing a patient and talking with them about their adherence, or engaging with them about their healthcare. Each patient is unique and different,
Mhm.
but it's not just being able to know which tool is right for that patient, but it's taking in all of the information across all of those experiences and knowing
Mhm.
how to blend them to get that maximum effect, right?
And yeah, and think of the confidence that you are able to instill in those patients. right? I had a condition called eosinophilic esophagitis, and if you're not familiar with that, what it is, it's some type of allergic reaction which causes my throat to swell, and it's very unglamorous. But I've choked on water before, I've choked on rice before, just because of that allergic response. And I remember going into the specialist, and before he put me under to do the scope on me, he said, I'm pretty sure I know what's wrong with you. Right. He had the experience and the perspective, and we all gain this. The thing is that doesn't happen overnight. That comes with years and years and years of time and repetition, time and repetition, time and repetition. And you get to the point where, especially early in your career, you don't have that mastery, and somebody asks you some questions, and maybe that gets to be a little bit challenging. But once you get in, especially working in a more specialized discipline for some amount of time, you have that level of mastery. All right, Nick, you have a level of mastery about performance measures. You understand the different bells and whistles and levers and buttons that are available to look at, and you would be able to say, okay, well, this is what we do. And I know that whenever we try this is what's going to happen. And when you have that mastery level, you're going to try something. There's going to be something that doesn't work quite right, and you're going to course correct, and and it will get better, right? Mastery is the complete opposite of animal awareness, right? It's when something goes bad, when something goes bad, you don't like lose your mind. When something goes bad, it's like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be proactive in how we navigate this versus reactive.
Yeah. And Jess, I'll note here as we kind of wrap up and close this topic, this isn't, and our conversation hasn't been about considering or avoidance of conflict or avoidance of these scenarios, which can be kind of painful, but it's about how do we best react, to them, where that it's as smooth, it's as clean, and it's as painless as possible for all members of that conflict, that
Yeah,
interaction, right?
let me give you just you used some nuanced language earlier. Let me offer some nuanced language for our listeners. It's the difference between reacting and responding, right?
Yeah.
Reacting, it's automatic, but a response is very thoughtful in how we do it, right? And so I share this because something's going to go wrong somewhere in the next certain amount of time, and I don't know when it is. I don't I don't know what it's going to be, but this is what I know. There's going to be some challenge that comes, right? And what we need to do is we need to recognize that, where do you want to be? Do you want to have yourself in a scenario where you're reacting, or do you want to put yourself in a situation where you can be responding? And that's, I share this because this is part of the draw that brought me into these leadership circles. I saw so many reactions. Oh, this didn't happen, this is what we're going to do. It was just there was a lot of what I would call knee jerk reactions that happened, and there was a lot of frustration, and then there was a lot of people who were bouncing up and down these different levels of awareness, and they're spending an awful lot of time on levels 1 and 2. And what I recognized is, and this was just part of the life changing experience that I had, was whenever I learned that leadership skills could be learned. You see, I hadn't thought of that beforehand. I thought that we were all just sort of gifted with some amount of leadership skill. I had heard the term natural born leader, and as a Gen Xer, there were a lot of pop culture characters that I was introduced to that were just natural leaders, and they just oozed confidence. And you pick anyone that you want, right? And I thought, well, you either have it or you don't. And what I came to realize is there's a lot of people that didn't. But what changed everything for me was learning that leadership skills can be learned. And the fact of the matter is that the leadership skills that you do have, you probably learned those from somebody else. And you may have learned some skills which may not have been all that good, right? And you can tell that they may not have been that good based on the results that you get. When you're doing something, well, this is the way we've always done it, but are you getting the results that you want? Well, no. Well, why do you keep doing that? right? It's
At
you've had that conversation before.
some point, it becomes the stop hitting yourself. Which
Yes.
when it comes to Thanksgiving and holidays, will be around the niece, the nephew, the grandchild, and that's a
Mhm.
game that you'll probably play, with them at some point. And it
Yep.
is a fun game, but it's not the world that you want to be living in
No.
as an adult when you're
Well,
on the
this
routine, excuse me, Monday to Friday, experience
right.
for your work.
It absolutely goes back to everyone deserves to be led well, right? And I think we have the obligation to at least explore improving our leadership skills. Now, Nick, I would like to do something. I know we're short on time here, but I'll at least mention this. I
Yeah,
have a gift I want to give your listeners.
go for it. Yeah.
I'll give you a link to put in the show notes. But what it is it'll be a link to a recording where I teach on a couple of leadership principles. The first principle that I teach on is the forbidden phrase of leadership. And Nick, I'm pretty sure you've gone through one of those sessions with me. That's such a powerful tool to raise your awareness. Right? There's a lot of people that will use that forbidden phrase of leadership at that level too. Right? It happens all the time. But then the other part of this of this video will be on what I call directional leadership, and this goes back to something, Nick, that you alluded to when it comes down to caring, the definition of leadership just being about caring,
Sure.
as recognizing the leadership that responsibilities that we all have. We have the opportunity not just to lead our teams or our patients, we also have the opportunity to lead those people who may have some type of position or leverage over us within whatever hierarchy we may work in. And I do a little teaching on that just to give you some perspectives, and to raise your awareness. And I think that if as you're able to do that, you just become empowered, right? I do that to encourage you. I made a note. I didn't know if you were going to ask me what I thought the future was going to hold. Typically, you ask me some type of question. Maybe should I pause and let you ask me that question, Nick?
Well, I mean, it's that part where we go through and just, I think part of understanding leadership, you and I both work kind of in different fields and in
Mhm.
different considerations. That is something we like to add, but also part of it now is, from our own standpoint, it's not, what's going to be new for pharmacy. If somebody in pharmacy wants to there's probably better people, more informed people on that particular topic that they can go to hear from. I think what we focus on here is really how do we get better as a pharmacist in the ways that are some would describe as the soft skills. I think I don't really like that terminology for it because to me it under it doesn't put enough emphasis behind the need that these are skills that are imperative for us to succeed, for us as individuals, for the team that we're leading, but also, and most importantly, the patients that we're serving.
Mhm.
So I'll let you continue, Jesse, because I think this is
Yeah.
something that's
Yeah,
great for us.
I would just offer that I'm a firm believer that with whatever the future of healthcare holds, pharmacists and pharmacy are the hope of healthcare. We are too well positioned to overlook that opportunity. That if some of those things are going to change and dramatically change for the better, pharmacists have to be involved in them. Yet we find this place of struggle because it's, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources. There's all these different things. I wrote down, and this is a very simple thing, and you can amaze your friends with this. But my prediction for the future is this: the future holds challenge and opportunity. It doesn't get much more sophisticated than that, right? There's going to be some challenge that comes down the road, and with that challenge, it's going to bring an opportunity. Now, the real question is not what does the future hold. The question is, what are you going to do in anticipation of this? Right? I've probably shared with you before. I may have shared with this audience before. There's not a group out there that says, "Oh my goodness, there's a challenge coming. We have too many leaders to navigate this challenge." Those words have never been said. right? What we need to recognize is, and I would just give this, every person on your team needs to develop some level of leadership skill. They all have different perspectives. They're probably operating at a different level of awareness than you are at any given moment, right? And they can and they can see and observe and bring solutions, very practical solutions to the table, and they may not be turnkey. You may have to massage and adjust and do some different things, but you have so much potential all around you to leverage a better solution for the future. But part of that is we have to invest in those skills, right? You have I've worked in a number of pharmacies where the technicians didn't feel like they could share any ideas with the pharmacist. I worked with some pharmacists as an intern who told me that they hate that the pharmacist told me that she hated interns and I shouldn't even come to work on the days that she's working. Right? There are different. There's just different environments out there, but as you recognize that there is going to be some challenge come. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it looks like, but the way to be prepared for it is to be equipping your team now, to be raising your level of awareness, just to be, even something as simple as being aware of these different levels of awareness can be very helpful to be able to say, "Hey, Nick, Nick, I think you're really fighting for this herd awareness level right now. You think we could level up to an aspiration or individual expression here, and that might be the circuit breaker that you need to be able to move your folks forward a step or two."
It's a great message, Jesse. And I know we are getting close to the end here. We could spend a lot more time going through this, what this means. I think the summary point that I'll keep here is that it's about a flexible mindset. It's about how we're able to not react, but how we are able to respond and understanding the context, being open to learning, being open with communication for ourselves, for those that are going to be around us. But Jesse, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need continued lessons on leadership, on awareness, on communication, and many other topics in 2025. And with that being said, and as we're finishing up here, where do they find you? How do they contact you so they can hear more of the great words, great ideas that you have to share?
So I would say this, Nick. One, click the link that we'll have related to the show notes here. Get signed up, watch the video. What matters most to me is that you improve your leadership skill. When you watch the video, you'll say either I like this guy and his teaching style, or I dislike him. And if you dislike it, that's fine. You can find somebody else. What I want is I want you to improve. I want you to be successful. So that would be one thing. Get on that. That would get you on my mailing list, so that we can let you know of different opportunities as they come forward. Also, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I try to share one or two thoughts every day, just to challenge, or to perhaps reinforce an idea that can move your business forward, that can move the way that you interact with somebody on your team or somebody that you provide care for, maybe just a way that you adjust your mindset. But yeah, that connect with me on LinkedIn. That's what I would ask that you do. Connect with me there, and that way you'll just have the opportunity. And I welcome messages on there. Be happy to help you however I can, and we'll have opportunities for individual and group lessons as we move forward. And I cannot stress enough. Leadership is not something that you go and you spend a day in the classroom or you do a CE on and all of a sudden you're competent. You need to be going, and you need to have people beside you. You need to have people encouraging you. It just goes back to your levels of awareness, right? When you try something at that individual expression and you get punched in the nose, you need to have people there that can help you get back up, that can help you fight through that to get to that level of discipline, right? And so don't go alone. Find ways to, and it may be with a partner, it may be with somebody on your team, it could be a family member, whatever. Because as you improve your leadership skills, everybody around you is going to get better.
Yeah. And as we finish this part up, Jesse, I'll note for a message for the audience as you're listening to this. We talked about the conversation today being the difference between reacting versus responding. And I would encourage you, as you follow Jesse on LinkedIn, on social media, and see the many posts and items that he's talking about, use that as an opportunity to respond. Maybe isn't right away, but as you read some of those words, some of those lessons and ideas, take it as an opportunity to let them, percolate a little bit in your head. And does that resonate with you? Do you have examples? I think a lot of these, be a leader in your own right and sharing, whether it's a real world example from these items or how this item has impacted you. It's a great way for us to all be part of that conversation, and really making some of the social media items as a way for good, and for us to be leaders as well for sharing those thoughts. And I'll leave that as my kind of final note. Jesse, we're going to wrap up here for this episode. Appreciate having you on the show as always. Any final comment?
I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. As I think we started off with this, there's a big part of this, which is home for me.
Yeah.
And it's good to come home. It's good to see you. I wish you all the best, and to all of our listeners, I wish you all and only the best as you go forward. And I welcome the opportunity to serve you and help you advance in your leadership journey.
All right. Well, no better way to sign off. So I'll get right into our closing for today's episode. Again, Jesse, thank you. Wish all the best for you, for your family as we're approaching the holiday season here. And for our audience, with that, we have wrapped up this episode. So we thank you for joining us today. We hope you listen to our next episode of the Quality Corner Show. And before we go, we have one final message from our team here at PQS.
The Pharmacy Quality Solutions Quality Corner Show has a request for you. Our goal is to spread the word about how quality measurement can help improve health outcomes, and we need your help in sharing this podcast to friends and colleagues in the healthcare industry. We also want you to provide feedback, ask us questions, and suggest health topics you'd like to see covered. If you are a health expert and you want to contribute to the show or even talk on the show, please contact us. You can email info@pharmacyquality.com. Let us know what is on your mind, what we can address, so that you are fully informed. We want you to be able to provide the best care for your patients and members, and we wish all of you listeners out there well.